talked about earlier, John, in your publication list of over 300 publications reveals also a significant number of vascular cases and vascular firsts. Mm-hmm. You think you had a first with mesenteric bypass?
Yeah, I did the first. It was a lady came in from Greece, believe it or not. And I don't know how I got that, except I think I was Secretary General of the International Cardiovascular, so it may have been through that. But she had Budd-Chiari syndrome. And I did an iliac mesenteric atrial shunt. And that was the first one. Got a nice picture of it. You know, we did an angiogram, and it was really beautiful to see it, that big graft go all the way up to the heart. And so that was the first. John Cameron, later on at Hopkins, as you know, got very interested in it and did a bunch of them, but we did the first one.
Terrific.
And there were the other things. I did the first ascending aorta gunshot wound. They dropped the guy in the emergency room, and I happened to be there. We just took him right up to the operating room in shock and all, and got a finger on it and corrected. I put that in the JAMA. I bypassed to the anterior tibial down at the ankle. That was the first one to go to the anterior tibial. And then I did the first homograph veins. But we had a big tissue bank at that time, and not many people had one. Kirkland had one at Alabama. Of course, they had CryoLife at Atlanta. And then everybody began to get their own tissue bank, which were wonderful. We could just grab things where we wanted it. But then the government got into it and said they didn't want individuals doing it. They wanted it to be only done in companies or industry. So we all gave it up and got them from CryoLife.
John, let's talk about some of your mentors, and you've had many. The first, of course, being your dad, who, although I'm sure was a mentor in many ways to you, I've heard him say that he was so proud of you as a surgeon.
Well, we went through 4 different phases. You know, disciplinarian at first until, you know, I was a grown. Then he was my teacher in medical school. And then I knew him when I joined the Department of Surgery as a colleague. And Dad took in everybody that was in this department. He treated very fairly and as an equal. He wasn't, you know, everybody was scared of him, of course, but and when we had our M&Ms, he was the last word, but I've heard of some of the M&Ms before I ever got here when they had people like Dr. DeBakey and Champ Lyons and all those guys in there as young guys, and they used to kind of argue over different things, you know, and when Daddy wasn't there, they said it was a riot. But anyway, then I knew him last as really a friend, and we kind of changed our positions in life. He used to come to me for guidance and you know, thoughts and what was right and what was wrong, and for the time, and even for his marriage after my mother died. When he wanted to get married, he came and he said, "I want to talk to you about this." And I said, "Dad, look, if you're in love and you feel that way, go right back." He met her in Los Angeles on a Saturday. He told me on a Sunday, and he went back on Monday to see her again. But he also was, I guess, probably the proudest I ever was when they did a video on him on his 80th birthday. He said that he thought, they asked him who he thought was the best surgeon he ever saw, and he said, "I think the best surgeon I've ever seen was my son John."
Would you rank any of the currently practicing generation of Ochners, currently operating generation of Ochners, among those truly great surgeons?
Well, I say my children are much smarter than I, and I mean it, because their mother was a very smart lady, and they take after their mother. Well, I think my sons, and particularly my son John, is a much greater surgeon than I. I think he's one of the greatest surgeons I've ever seen.
Does that delight you?
It does very much, of course.
Let's also talk about Dr. DeBakey. This was a very unique experience and relationship you had from going from the fact that he was your babysitter until evolving into being your boss when you were in Houston. Tell us about that luncheon you had, John, with Dr. Overstreet and Oscar Creech when you first got to Houston.
Well, when I first got to Houston, and I was getting ready to go on the service at Jeff Davis, Dr. Overstreet and Dr. Creech, both of whom trained under my dad, said, "We want to take you to lunch. They want to take me to the doctor's club." And boy, that was a real treat. Yes, sir. I didn't have any money or anything, and got to eat in a fancy doctor's a lounge. And so anyway, so they took me to lunch, and they said, "We want to give you words of advice. Two particular. Forget Mike. It's Dr. DeBakey. Number two, never talk back. And number three, never make an excuse." And that helped me tremendously through my training, because all I ever said to Dr. DeBakey was, "Yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, sir, no, sir." Never said anything else. One time when I was on, he got mad at me. He grabbed me behind my little lapel like that. He said, "Can't you say anything but yes, sir, no, sir?" I said, "No, sir."
Yeah. Tell us about Dr. Cooley.
Dr. Cooley, a great technician. Dr. Bakey, incidentally, before I leave him, was a brilliant man.
Oh, sure.
I mean, people don't know. It's just unbelievable what he knew. I mean, he could talk on any subject in the world. As a kid, he read the encyclopedia from end to end. And I think he was 12 then. But, the things he did outside of medicine, he started the National Medical Library. Right. I mean, he was the only man behind that. He was the force. He just did so many things. He did a lot of things for politicians when they wanted to, LBJ wanted to know what they should do with health. He drafted the policies for him. He was just an outstanding, brilliant man. And he was tough as hell, but he was as charming as one can be when one is away from the rituals that go along with a mentor and a student. Anyway, to go to Den, Den is charismatic, probably as good as any technical surgeon in the world, particularly on big stuff. You wouldn't want him to do your carotid, because he wouldn't have the time to put in the small little dexterities that one needs to maybe tack something down to do something, it'd be in and out. If it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't. But if you have those times, particularly a big old thoracic aneurysm where we couldn't count on the pump and we're taking them out without the pump and all, he was as good as they came. And it's the same with in and out of a heart. See, speed. The thing that made Den really famous was that he got a lot of patients through operations that nobody else could get them through, only because he would only spend 20 minutes on the pump. John Kirkland would be there and do a precise job and spend, an hour, and then he'd have to work with, the complications of the pump after. And the same at Hopkins and every place else. But at the same time, we didn't do such a good job in in correcting them. We weren't precise, because I know I wanted to look up the tetralogies that we had done at the time, and there weren't a lot of them. There were only about 25 then that we'd done over that year and a half period or something. And when I started looking up, God, a large number of them had VSDs that weren't completely closed, or the pulmonary stenosis wasn't completely obliterated, so that paper was never published. But what I'm just saying is, Den knew how to get it going. He knew how to get the patients. He knew how to get the patient a lot. And at that time, the success of an operation in heart surgery was they were in the recovery room. Mm-hmm. That was almost, like they had made it.
Sure.
And not what they were going to do 20 years down the line.
Tell us about you and Dr. Mattis.
Well, Dr. Mattis was another brilliant man.
I know you wrote a wonderful article on his complex life.
Yeah.
But tell us about you and Dr. Mattis.
All right. Well, I knew him first as a child when at Mardi Gras, when the parades went through the city, they always stopped at about 5 or 6 places. One place the Kings always stopped was to toast Dr. Mattis, because he was the foremost citizen, I think, in this city. And we as children would go over to his house to watch the parade. And he had a fence there that we were using behind, but they could throw the beads over the fence and we would get them and all. But he also had in his parlor, he had like an igloo, but it was a permanent igloo that was, maybe 4 or 5 feet long, and it was filled with soft drinks. And they were those big 16-ounce bottles of sarsaparilla and red sodas, raspberry, strawberry, everything. And those were the best. And I remember Dr. Mattis, he'd bring them to you, this old man, and we were, of course, young little things running around then. But I can always remember him being so kind.
He had his little goatee then, didn't he?
Yes, had his little goatee. And then when he became blind, he lost one eye operating on a lady that had an ovarian abscess, which was gonococcal, and got into his eye, and he lost his eye. And he was very vain about that. He was never seen for a while after they took it out, because at that time, if you didn't take it out, it was going to spread to the other one. So they took it out, and then he had a glass eye made in France, and he had to wait till that thing was made, and he put that in. But he eventually became blind. A group of us at the Nu Sigma Nu fraternity used to read to him. We'd take turns going over to his house and reading to him. And
medical material? Or
medical material, journals.
Not the novels that he liked to read.
Oh, no, well, I didn't read any of the novels, but he loved those. Yeah.
In the movies.
Yeah, in the movies. He was a very strong, devoted to movies, but he also liked the trash novels. But this was medicine because, we were young medical students, we were trying to learn something from him. But it was unbelievable. He said, now, somebody else did that. I'd be reading, somebody else did that. He said, now, if you go under the staircase, there's a pile of books, and in the second row, you look down, it must be about the 4th volume down, and bring that to me. I'd go in there, and he'd open up, and there it'd be.
So he had books all over his house.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He had books every place. He started really Tulane's library. It was practically nothing till he died. He just gave them everything.
John, let's move to another area, a focus area, and talk about John Ochsner as a leader and an idea man. From your vast experience of being president of 10 different surgical societies, plus boards, committees, and so forth, you had quite a substantial experience in this area. Somewhere in there, you came up with the idea for the Journal of Vascular Surgery. Is that true, or can you expand
No,
on that?
I didn't come up with the idea. Dr. DeBakey did. In fact, he even had a publisher called Masson, French, Masson, I think it was. But he brought it up, and the two societies, joint societies, met together at the time, and they decided that, yes, we ought to have a journal. So they developed an ad hoc committee. They made me chairman, and on that committee was Szilagyi, Baird, and Cal Ernst.
This was in the early 80s?
This was the first meeting we had, and here are the minutes that I wrote, was October 2nd, 1982. So the joint meeting had to be the year before that, a few months before that.
So even though the idea may have come from Dr. DeBakey, the fact that you were able to bring this to reality was through this committee.
Oh yes, yes. We worked pretty hard. We had a bunch of these are all my notes on it, minutes and all. And at this one in particular, we discussed who we were going to get as a publisher, and the firms that we were considering were Mosby and University Park Press, and I felt that Mosby was definitely the way to go, only because at that time I was also secretary of the Thoracic Society of the American Association of Thoracic Surgery, and we had a journal that was the most read journal in the world, mainly because we had all the Europeans reading it and Asians too. But it supported the whole society. I mean, it made us money. So I know if we went with them, they could do the same thing with the Vascular Society. And that was the biggest fear of going with anybody else, whether we could afford it.
And you also established the ownership copyright.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So all of those things, I would have to say that it looks like you were at least a co-founder or father.
Well, no, I was the guy that just put it. I just put it together. DeBakey was the guy, and we had a group that first we put to be considered for editor. We had DeBakey, Szilagyi, and Jesse Thompson, and of course we said that DeBakey had to do it. He was the father of modern vascular surgery, and it was also his idea.
But John, one of the things that I'd been told many times about you in particular was that you were always modest, that things that you really did, you would give other people credit. And I think this is a prime example. You were able to deliver this into reality, from an idea and bring it into reality. Yeah. And I think this is a prime example of your modesty.
I was trying to save us money too, because there was certain people that wanted to pay everybody something, and I had a hard time with that. One person in particular never would get over that he wasn't known as the first editor, and that was Szilagyi, and I felt sorry for him, because he really did a lot of the work for Dr. DeBakey when we made Dr. DeBakey editor and Szilagyi an associate editor. But DeBakey even sent me a letter and had, God, he must have had 40 guys to consider. but he wanted on the editorial board. He wanted to be editor. He wanted Stanley Crawford to be associate editor and George Morris to be associate editor. But I didn't think that was right. You couldn't have all coming from our group, you know, that were trained. But anyway, so we came up with a list and sent it back to the societies, and we let them pick.
Another area, John, in the beginning, the thoracic surgeons were helpful, I've heard, with the American Board, who, at least at that time and certainly currently, are very hostile towards vascular surgery, whereas some cooler heads, such as John Ochsner.
Well, I tell you what happened there was Paul Ebert, who was the executive director of the college. He and I were playing golf one time, and after golf we sat down, and Paul said, "How about having dinner tonight?" And I said, "Fine." He said, I got some things I want to discuss with you. So we went to dinner, just the two of us, and he said, "You know, you're chairman of the cardiovascular committee for the college." And he said, "You know, it's a place that both vascular and cardiac surgeons all put their number one piece of work. You know, if they want something to get out, that's where they take it." At that time, vascular surgery had to be, if you were a vascular surgeon, you had to have a badge at the college meeting as either a general surgeon or a thoracic surgeon. They had no place. But we decided we'd divide them into sections. And so we divided the cardiovascular committee into the vascular section and the cardiac section. And I became chairman of the first vascular section of the college. And I gave up the cardiac. And I did that just so that people wouldn't think that I was trying to do something to get myself into the cardiac arena more, which I was, you know, of course, trying to get into more.
John, you've had over 300 publications, huge honors, including a very unique honor of being the recipient of both the Michael E. DeBakey and the Denton A. Cooley Award. This is unheard of, to be the recipient from both of those awards. Further, your achievements are just almost too many to list. Why do you think this happened to John Ochsner?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm more of a friendly person, I think, than anything else. Don't take life too seriously, but I really have enjoyed my relationship with both Dr. DeBakey and Dr. Cooley.
Now, John, why do you think you have achieved so much?
I know I'm not a very intelligent man. I'm a worker, though. I can put in the hours. Well, when I was in my residency, I said I was up every morning at 4 o'clock and didn't go to bed until, you know, after midnight. It was just, you know, take a cat nap when you could. But I did that through most of my younger life. I can tell you now, I sleep like hell.
And you deserve it. John, do you have any secrets or tips about time management?
No, I think you just have to think of every minute. You just don't waste it. Walk fast, and that's good for you too. But if you, the other thing though that I do know, don't wait for a deadline. You know, don't get that far that you have to do it because something's going to happen that you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to get an emergency case. You're going to get sick. Something. Right. Be sure that whatever you've got to do, you finish it about a month beforehand, and then you have that time for it to finish. Now, in writing a paper, you can never do that because you know you have to wait to the data is finished, you know, and compiled, and and nurtured, and then you can go ahead and write your paper, but don't put anything else away.
Great advice. John, as a human being, we all have disappointments in life. Have you had disappointments? And if so, what have you learned from these disappointments?
Every time I miss a 3-putt putt, I'm devastated.
Well,
I'm trying to think of,
if you have to think that long for disappointments, you've had a very, very successful life, John.
well, thank you, but I have had a successful life. I've been very lucky and fortunate to have the opportunities that I've had. I hope I've done well for them, because I must say that I've been lucky. I've had a father as a guide. I've had, Dr. DeBakey and Cooley as mentors. I've been very fortunate.
But you've had opportunities, but you've always made the best of and the most of every opportunity. Let's talk for a moment. You said about missing putts. Let's talk about some of your hobbies. Besides golf, you were also a very fine tennis player as a young man.
I was a good tennis player at one time.
And also, you were Rex of Mardi Gras in 1990,
Yes.
after your father was Rex in 1948.
48.
Tell us about being Rex.
Well, that's probably the most fun anybody can have. When you're president of an organization, you got to write a presidential address. You've got to run the organization for a year or two, whatever the time is, and it's all work. But when you're king of Mardi Gras, you don't do a damn thing. They won't let you do anything. You're king. And they teach you they have a girl that teach you how to be regal, how to sit, what to do with your legs, what to do with your arm, how to do the scepter, etc. And I remember they told me one time, I don't care if your grandmother comes in front of you, don't you dare get off that throne. You're king. She's got to bow to you.
Well, you were not only involved in being Rex of Mardi Gras, but numerous other civic organizations and activities, 3 school boards in New Orleans, many charitable organizations. Also, president of the World Trade Center. How did that happen, John?
Well, I did a lot with trade, what they would consider trade, down in Central and South America. We had a huge, at one time, 12% of the patients coming to the clinic were from Central and South America. That is down to about less than 1% now, only because we don't have a airline that has direct flights down there.
John, I'd like to finish the interview by asking you some questions that are strictly your personal opinion. I know you've kind of held back up until now, but I'd like you to give us your personal opinion on these matters. The first is, as you know, the American healthcare system has become clearly a political football. Do you think we've lost our way? And do you think that the United States can ever recapture a leadership role?
I don't know. We're going to have a very difficult time because it's steamrolling now, and I don't. The present administration has 4 years to enforce the Affordable Care Act, and it looks like it's going along as they expected. There are few governors like our governor who hasn't taken the Medicaid money, which personally I think is ridiculous. Why punish everybody in the state just because you want to be a strong Republican? And really, our governor, I think, wants to be president. He's kind of jockeying for that job now, or to run for president. but a lot of it that they have is just ridiculous. Like who is who like these boards they have to make decisions.
Right.
Some of them don't even have a doctor on them,
Right.
and some of them will have to make a decision on a specialty in which there's nobody on the board who's a member of that particular specialty. Things like that, you just can't let that go. I mean, that would just be utterly chaotic.
John, the merger of JVS or SVS and ISCVS has been seen by many as a huge advantage. Do you think the influence of that merger on international exchange has been negative or positive?
Oh, it's going to be positive. Everything today is merger.
Right.
And that's why we have 7 hospitals now instead of 1. Personally, I was never for going out and having other hospitals. This is the main campus. This is a thing that when we try to get our statistics, we try to get them from this institution. And my dad really saw the clinic as a specialization clinic.
Right.
He didn't even want any general practitioners around. Now you have to have,
Right.
but all of them today are internists anyway. But I think you are good in strength. They haven't done that in the thoracic field. But as people say, sometimes the minnows will eat the whale. So you never know. But I know, I think it's good to have the merger.
Several years ago, there was a significant move to establish an independent board of vascular surgery with many leaders, including Frank Veith, who wanted an independent board. And over half of the membership of SVS voted in favor, and yet this movement failed. Why do you think that happened?
I don't know. I don't know the end. I'm out of what's going on in the societies these days. But
as a bystander.
oh, it's ridiculous. Vascular surgery is proven to be a specialty. That's why we did it in the college. Right. It had to have a special section. Nowadays, there's no way that you can really do fine vascular surgery and be a general surgeon all the time, except for an occasional vascular operation. You can do that, but you'll never be as good as the guy that's doing it every day. Right. And doing the variations and doing some of the new procedures.
What are your thoughts on endovascular surgery?
I think it's wonderful. I really do. I think I've always said, boy, get in it right away. Don't stay out of it because you're going to get beat.
You've talked a little bit about time management. Do you have any other thoughts specifically about time management?
No, nothing specific outside of just keep yourself busy all the time. You don't have to sit and daydream.
What's your favorite vascular operation?
I think the operation I could do better than I think anybody was a abdominal or thoracoabdominal operation. I could really do those well.
And they were your favorites?
They were my favorites, yeah.
Do you have any advice for young vascular surgeons that are starting today?
Just you can't do vascular surgery, almost like all surgery. You've got to do a lot of them to get proficient. Once you do 100 of anything, you feel very competent that you can do it as well as anybody else. And it usually takes about that number. But there are not many vascular surgeons today that if they, after 10 years in the field, they'll do that. So they'll feel that way.
I think this is touching the same common thread you communicated when we had our last interview over 10 years ago, talking about the giants that you had known as a child in your home. The common thread seemed to be hard work.
Well, it probably is, yeah. I'm sure all those four men that we talked about, they were all hard workers, yeah.
Just like,
But they were smart too. They had a combination.
well, another hard worker and real smart surgeon was John Ochsner.
Well, no,
And John, thank you so much.
thank you, Roger. Appreciate it. You're a good friend.